On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, Philadelphia Sixers 2-0 after a victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers. And once again, Tyrese Maxey stars. We'll talk about him and the debut of PJ Tucker, Daniel House, Joel Embiid, and James Harden for this preseason next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, you are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my partner from the Inquirer.com. He's the Sixers beat writer, Keith Pompeii. Keith, what's happening, man? 2-0 Sixers right now.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned about the 2-0 just because it's the preseason. So, you know what I mean? I don't get in that. But the thing that really impressed me, D, is like, and I'm sorry for being long-winded.
No, go.
But you kind of sway. I'm kind of like swaying on your side a little bit with the Tyrese Maxey thing. The young boy is balling right about now. So, like, even if they would have lost that game, they'd have been 1-1. I feel like we still would have been talking about Tyrese Maxey no matter what.
He's been the story. He's been phenomenal through two games. Again, just preseason. But if we're going to talk about guys who don't appear to be in tip-top condition at this point and playing the way that we want them to be playing, like Tyrese Maxey is, then, we got to give credit to the young fella for doing what he's doing. But first, let's thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On 76ers. You talked about it, man. He 21 points to lead all scorers on Wednesday night. He was 6 for 8 from the field, I think, again, or was it? Yeah, 6 for 8.
He was actually 9 for 11
9
from
for 11. All right, 6 for 8 was on
3
Monday. 9 for 11, 3 for 3 from deep, dropping a few assists, a couple of boards. Also, turned the ball over a little bit last night, but so what, right? Get those kinks out in the preseason. But no, man, he looked really good yet again, leading this team, and that was with Joel Embiid, James Harden returning, debuting of PJ Tucker as he started. He was 0 for 1 from the floor, a little floater. That's his normal shot. He'll get that going in that little pocket pass from James Harden. Daniel House also taking one shot, making his lone three. But Tyrese Maxey starred again, man, and he did it in a lot of different ways from beyond with the 3 threes. But once again, getting to the basket, there was one point where he even had last night, he had Donovan Mitchell skating a little bit on a turnaround jump shot fadeaway that he had in the intermediate area of the game. What did you think of it? I think a lot of people know based on how you opened it up. But your thoughts on Tyrese Maxey through 2 games, 41 points.
I'm extremely impressive. I mean, we're talking about the shooting guard combined to score 41 points in just 29 minutes, right? Right? That's crazy. But here's the thing, D. He's shooting 78.9% from the field, including 71.4% on three-pointers. He's 5 for 7. I mean, yes, he had that little turnaround jumper on Donovan Mitchell, but he also had 2 kind of huge threes in that that second quarter when he came in. So, it's kind of like he was 5 for 5. He had 12 points and 2 threes. It just seems like he's playing well. And, it's one of those things. The thing that I really impressed about him is, when you talk to him, everything is all about the team, right? It's not about him, it's about the team. And the expectations are rising now. And all he keeps talking about is, listen, it's all about winning. I'm not concerned about being an all-star. I'm not concerned about doing all that other stuff. I just want to win. And to me, that's the type of guy you want on your team. But I know it's the preseason, but we're talking about he's shooting 78.9% from the field. That's strong.
It is. And in this case, we can't talk about Embiid and Harden weren't there. Him carrying the ball. They were there. Now they had to get their feet underneath them. It's their first game of the preseason, feel things out. But he got it going again right away, basically, where he and Tobias Harris started the game off with a pretty good flow. Harris finished with 9 points on 3 for 4 shooting, and you look at what they were able to do, and I mean 4 for 5 shooting, sorry, and look at what they were able to do, and Maxey just looks like he's just taking that next step. Now, what is that next step going to ultimately be, and how consistent will these type of performances be for the Sixers? I don't know, but what I do think is, and I said this on the post game after the game, which was when he started last season, and we touched on this the last episode just a little bit. When he started last season, he started the season off knowing that he would begin the year, but it was still that hope that Ben Simmons might come back. He later on returned. Will he be back? Will he eventually take the floor for them again? And Tyrese Maxey will be relegated to the bench, but in a 6-man type of role. That's what it was. There were still some things up in the air. There was no up in the air on this one. He was starting this year, playing next to James Harden in the starting lineup. And the other part that wasn't there at the beginning of the year was the three-point shooting, the consistency, the confidence in taking the shots that he is now taking. Keith, as you mentioned, being perfect on Wednesday night, 3 for 3. Mm-hmm. The confidence that he's showing in taking these shots, there's no hesitation. So now when he's taking these shots at this point of the start of the year versus a season ago where he would take those shots and we're like, that's not really your thing yet. Get to the basket, be more consistent going to the basket and doing your thing in the paint, use your speed, transition, all that. He is now a threat from beyond. And whenever he shoots it now, we're like, oh, okay, that might be going in. That's how good he has been. And if that is something that carries over through the regular season, maintains that type of shooting, I don't know if he can keep that up. He's not going to shoot 78.9% and go, what was he, 5 for 7 from deep and have that type of percentage for the entire year. But the confidence to be able to shoot at a high level and do that consistently, that's a different wrinkle from the beginning of the year where that Tyrese Maxey was a totally different player than this one that's starting off this 22-23 campaign.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah, so if he can do this, balancing it out with James Harden in the backcourt and Embiid on the floor, the democracy conversation that Doc Rivers was talking about, things will still run through them, but they won't hesitate at all in finding Tyrese Maxey when it comes to helping out with he has a one-on-one matchup or if he's that first catch out of Joel Embiid's double team and being able to knock that shot down. So that's where we began, and we have to talk about another young player who played well and kind of look at it where Doc Rivers is going to have to figure out what he wants to do with that backup big man role because Paul Reed was the first big man off the bench, but Montrezl Harrell also played well in his minutes down the stretch, leading the bench scoring last night. So we'll talk about that next. We'll also later on get into a GM poll about Joel Embiid and where he ranked in a major category. Also, we'll do all that next right here on Locked On 76ers.
Right now, I want to talk to you guys about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your football betting info this season. Find all the latest player development, team matchup, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf, and the NBA. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. And as I always say, and D always backs me up, do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
Absolutely. Do it today. We hope that you can do it today. So, all right. Just got to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Make sure you check out the Locked On, the ultimate pro basketball preview starting October 10th, a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one ultimate NBA preview that starts and begins on October 10th. Search for Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. It'd be fun conversation to check in around the NBA and see where some of the other insiders, how they feel about their respective teams. But Keith, with this one last night, Paul Reed, were you surprised that he was the first substitute off the bench as far as the big men go when Joel Embiid came out of the game? Paul Reed got the first call from Dave Yeager, who was in for Doc Rivers, out with a non-COVID illness on Wednesday night. Paul Reed gets that first run and looked pretty good doing so. How surprised were you that he was the first sub off the bench for the big men?
I'm not surprised at all. And the reason being is because, after the last game, it was funny. I go to shoot around before the last game, and you're hearing all this stuff coming out of camp before that, where people kept saying, hey, man, I know they got Paul playing power forward in certain sets, but Paul's been the backup center. I said, not Montrez. They're like, nah, Paul has been. And then when you go to shoot around, you see that Paul has on the gray jersey. Joel's not playing, but Paul had on the gray starters jersey, right? So it's like, wow. And then come to find out, he informed you, other people informed you that he's been the backup. So, in the last game that he played in, that first game against Brooklyn, he played well. He had 10 points. He had three steals, 6 rebounds. He was finding teammates. So he played extremely well. And I feel like, it's one of those things where I know Montrez had 13 points yesterday, but you got to be honest with yourself and say that Paul Reed has not at this point done anything that will make you think that he's going to lose that job. Last night, he had 4 steals. His 7 steal total through 2 games is the best in the NBA this preseason. So I have to say it, man. I haven't been surprised because this guy has been balling. And you know one thing about him? You know how like Doc and them kept saying it was taking the time for him to find his place. We all saw the raw athletic ability and the things he could do. But now you look at him, he's always in the right space. Things seem to be more fluid to him. He has more confidence. And he's out there playing, man. And it looks like the Sixers were fortunate that they didn't trade him or like they didn't lose him because it just seems like right now he seems like he's a quality backup for them at this particular time.
He's been playing well. I was surprised that he was the first one off the bench. Yeah, I thought that he would get some minutes and we would see that exploring again at the 4, maybe get a few minutes with Embiid before he was done for the night, and see Montrezl Harrell as that first big man off the bench. I don't know what went into it, but maybe as you pointed out through the first week of training camp and playing well against Brooklyn on Monday as a starter in place of Joel Embiid, he looked pretty good. And I got to give Paul Reed credit. I know he talked about wanting to gain the trust of the coaching staff when they put him on the floor, not worried about putting him on the floor. And he looks, like you said, he looks like he's not lost. He's not scattered. He's not trying to find himself like we've seen in the past when it comes to Paul Reed trying to figure out what the plays may be or what direction he's supposed to be going in that particular game. 18 minutes, as you pointed out, 5 points, given that 6 boards, 4 steals, 2 assists, only 1 turnover in that 18-plus minute. And he does look the part right now as a primary backup. Now, again, it was against Cleveland that as far as their reserves go, it was, I think, Robin Lopez was the backup last night. And while Robin Lopez is a big backup, he's not as agile. He's not as athletic. He can play against a bigger body like that where we're really accustomed to seeing him play against the more, as I just said, more athletic type of centers when we look at the Toronto Raptors or the Miami Heat where they're backups. Paul Reed can play against them instead of going up against, I'll just make up a name, DeMarcus Cousins as a backup. You don't really want Paul Reed going up against him because offensively he can get buckets, really, really physical, and it might be a problem for him in that particular case. But hey, if he keeps performing like this and he gets the call from Doc Rivers and he's performing the way that he is, then when we talked about those top 10 and him being in the top 11 after that 10, Montrezl Harrell being in the top 10, maybe that's the reverse. But look, it's a good thing to have those two dual type of big men where they play a little differently out there on the floor. So more rugged, of course, Montrezl Harrell. Paul Reed is rugged in the sense that he can be more athletic, more defensive minded. He has shown that he can play right now, at least based on these first two opponents with the Brooklyn Nets and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He can play as that primary. So we'll see what he happens on Monday. Monday, they have their third game against the same team. Will he get the nod on that one, or will Montrezl Harrell, will they see? So what does it mean, though, for Montrezl Harrell? Because Montrezl Harrell came in and also played well, I thought, and really helped lead them back as they were down for a good part of the game. He helped to bring them back in the time that he was out there for the 16-plus minutes, 13 points, as you mentioned, to lead the bench scoring, 15 minutes, what was it? 16 minutes, 5 for 7 from the floor, 3 for 6 from the foul line, 3 boards, 2 assists, 1 block, 1 turnover in his time. What did you make of Montrezl Harrell's play as he was primarily a guy that was coming off playing against the second unit last night?
You know, I like it. I mean, the thing about Montrez is he has that one thing that I guess you can't coach. He comes in there with, I'm not going to say reckless abandon, but he has like, I mean, his attitude. I mean, it's like he's in mean mugging, you know, like I'm going for the juggler type of dude on every possession. I mean, there's even times when he like falls to the ground and the guy who knocks him down from the other team is like reaching to say, I'm sorry, and want to pick him up. And he's like, get away. I got my teammates. You know what I mean? He's like a back room alleyway type of dude, right? He brings that junkyard mentality. So I like that. But I think that and I know he has long arms. I get all that. I know my man has long arms and all that. But I think that right now, I like that lineup that they had when he was and Paul Reed were playing together. Because if you notice, if Montrez has a weakness, as good as he is motor-wise, you know, his defense isn't his top thing. But then you have Paul getting these steals. You have Paul like ability to block shots. So when I look at those two together, and I think that has something to do with Paul also being the backup, is because he can be a rim protector. But when you look at those two together, I think Montrez shines when he's playing with Paul because he can be more of the offensive guy and let Paul do some of the other things. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, so I like that because, you know, he was just driving the lane, muscling, getting that bucket like he got the one that basically the game winner, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then you had Paul anchoring. So I think that he's going to be a good addition. The one thing is that when you look at this competition on this roster right now, you have George Niang, you have Montrez, you got all these guys. The Sixers are deeper than what we thought they were going to be, and it's going to be tough to make it in this rotation for a lot of guys.
I don't know if they're deeper than we thought because we talked about this. It's going to be tough for guys to get on the floor, and these minutes are going to be tough to come by. And that's where we talked about, when I was bringing up the sacrifice part of it, because guys are going to want to get paid at the end. Guys are going to want their minutes to be able to get paid. This is a pretty deep roster that they have. A good problem to have for Doc Rivers and the coaching staff as it all comes down to it. Montrezl Harrell is a guy who just wants to bounce around, look for contact, and make things uncomfortable for the other team. So he's already, you can see that he relates to the fan base. He was barking in the third quarter early with the fans. And it's like, dude, what's happening here? Settle down. You got plenty of time for that. But that's what he thrives off of. That contact, that energy that he brings, screaming after a layup, an and one, flexing to the crowd, high-fiving the fans. I saw, as he was kind of walking towards the media section after that 1-and-1 that he got, Keith, and, he's dapping up the fans in the front seats there, courtside seats or along the baseline. and right there behind it, right in front of the media area. And he's going to be something as far as the fan base and just relating to them and when he's out there on the floor doing this part, man. So we'll see. But one of those two guys will be backing up the big fella, the two-time MVP runner-up for the past 2 seasons, Joel Embiid. Doesn't seem to appear to be a big focus, at least right now, going into this year, of winning that award. Of course, everybody wants to win and be called the best, but doesn't seem like that's the focus. There was a GM poll, man. As these seasons get started, there are always these GM polls that are put together. GM poll had Joel Embiid in one particular spot that you wanted to talk about. We'll address that next. Final segment here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You are Locked On 76ers, your
Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. Keith Pompeii, Devon Givens with you here. And Keith, there was a poll done, and the general managers were polled and asked about certain players and where their roles are for this particular year. We know about the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved, Rookie of the Year. All that type of stuff is included in these types of polls. But one really stood out where you wanted to talk about this one. So, what was the ranking that the GMs had Joel Embiid in?
It's funny because what they had is, Joel was in a lot of things. Like they had top international players, which he wasn't even listed, right? But
he's a U.S. citizen now.
Well, yeah, but he's also a French citizen, one of those. But yeah, I was thinking the same too. But it's crazy. But the one thing that got me is, and it's not the fact that he's third in there; it's just the few amount of percentage of votes he received. So Right now, so with this, for people who don't know, the NBA app has a GM survey which puts 50 questions in front of league leaders and ways to pool of responses to each one, right? So, Joel Embiid, we all know that he's he was a MVP runner-up in each of the past 2 seasons. Well, he was third in voting for to get MVP this year. But it was just a wide margin. So 48% of the league general managers picked Dallas point guard Luka Doncic to win the MVP award. Milwaukee forward Giannis Antetokounmpo was second with 34%, followed by Embiid at 14%. Now, to me, I'm like, wow, he only got 14%. Like, because when you look at Embiid and you look at the Sixers, and this is supposedly on paper, some people are saying their best team, right? They're saying that their best team. And we all know what they're saying, how they want to use Embiid and Harden heavily in the pick and rolls. They want to post Embiid up. And last year, Embiid led the league in 30.6 points scoring. So you assume that he's going to have at least the same type of a lead, right? Well, he wasn't getting that love. And then also he was a distant second to Nikola Jokic, the 2-time MVP last 2 years, in league voting for top center. Jokic got 79%, Embiid got 17%. And, he was tied for fourth with Doncic behind Curry, with players who forces opposing coaches to make their most adjustments. And Embiid only got 7% of those votes, him and Luka. Curry got 52%. So when I look at that, I'm like, you know what? It seems like it could be a little bit of not disrespect, but undervaluing what Embiid brings to his Sixers team. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah, I guess at this rate and watching how things go, look, he's always voted in by the fans for the NBA All-Star game, so we never know how the coaches feel in that regard of putting him on the All-Star team. I'd imagine that they would still put him on the team because he's that good. When it comes to these 2 runner-up situations for the MVP these past 2 seasons, I thought he should have at least had one of them. The second one last season, more so than year 1 because of the missed time. And I understand that. So I get that. And so I guess I'm not really surprised, honestly, Keith, because as you pointed out, not going to say it's disrespect, but the Jokic things for national people and for the general managers seem like the more safer, more fun, look at what he's doing type of work out there versus what Joel Embiid is doing, where it could be looked at as, oh, he's just bullying guys down there in the low block. They're not a lot of centers. He can do that stuff. Where Jokic is, yes, he's able to bully them, but he also has this finesse and this flair to his game. He's a fantastic passer. He's not worried about the MVP. As I was just talking to some of the guys the other day, where he's asked the question about the MVP and he answered it. We can't have it both ways, where we want to hear athletes tell the truth. He tells the truth, and that was the problem. So I don't know, man, at this stage, because I don't even know what he might want to do. Does he care about the MVP anymore? He says he's not going to worry about it. When he was talking to you guys on media day, just going to go out there and play. He talked more about the team being the number one defensive team in the league, speaking about how he needs the championship and he can't worry anymore about the MVP stuff. I don't believe that to be true. Of course he's going to worry about that at some point where he's putting up those numbers and these mid-season awards come out, for like these polls. And he's still going to worry about it. And that's okay. That's the human nature of it. And he's going to see this type of stuff. But when he sees this, if he pays attention to it, and if it matters to him at all, I hope he uses it as fuel for, what he needs to help lead this team to a championship. If that's where he's going to put his energy of worrying about something, I hope the energy is put forth that and using that as motivation. If he sees these things and he's like, all right, yeah, these guys are just flat out being disrespectful. 79-14 or whatever it is, that's kind of crazy. You can have your favorite. What was it again? What was it framed as for it to be so, as best center in the league?
Yeah, best center. Like it was 79-17.
Best center, or the center I prefer as a general manager. That's one thing.
Yeah,
the one I
best center. Yeah, the top.
It's not that wide of a margin in terms of who's the better center. I don't.
Nah, it's not. It's not. And to me, that's where, that's where I looked at it and I'm saying to myself, like, this is ridiculous. And then, like, I get it. Like you said, he's a U.S. citizen / French citizen. But I know that was a joke, right? But it's like, how do you? And then we talk about game planning. Like, oh, you don't really have to game plan against him. But at the same time, they saying he's the most dominant big man that they've seen in a long time, and
they send those double and triple teams at him. That's game plan. He's number one on the whiteboard. Come on.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, and then let me see. Here we go. Let's see. He didn't receive any votes. Yeah, he didn't receive any votes in like the top, like I said, the top European player. I mean, top overseas player, international player. That's crazy, man. And they had 3. Now, I will say this. That
who was the third outside of Luka and Jokic?
Luka, Jokic, and of course Luka, Jokic, and then Giannis. You know what I mean? But right. It's kind of like, I just don't understand it. I just didn't understand it. Now the thing about it is they were very high on the acquisitions of PJ Tucker, right? So right now the Sixers were tied with the Minnesota Timberwolves behind the Cleveland Cavaliers as the team with the best off-season moves. Now the Cavs received 41% of the vote. The Sixers and the Timberwolves received 17 each. PJ Tucker, right, was and Clippers point guard John Wall are tied for second behind Boston point guard Malcolm Brogdon for the most underrated acquisitions. And DeAnthony Melton was fourth. Now, Brogdon got 28% of the vote. Tucker and Wall got 14 each, and Melton was fourth. Now, the Sixers didn't receive any votes to win the Eastern Conference at all. They did, however, have the most votes, 66%, to finish third.
All right. I mean, these preseason polls, look, they're in there. They're in the conversation. Joel Embiid is in there in the conversation. Same for the Sixers, PJ Tucker, as you mentioned, DeAnthony Melton. Good moves by the team. Great offseason, in my opinion, with how they put together this team and the depth. Nice job by Elton Brand and Daryl Morey. But that is kind of odd the way that these that 79 to 14 or whatever the number is, 74 to
79 to 17. Yeah.
79 to 17.
Yeah.
He's not that much better than Joel Embiid. Preference, that may be one thing. Better, he's not that better. They are neck and neck, in my opinion, as far as the NBA best centers go. I'll take either one on my team. I love Nikola Jokic's game, but I don't look at it. I don't even look at Joel Embiid and say he's 79 to 14 the other way over Nikola Jokic. That's how good both of them are. So that number is a bit surprising, but I'm not surprised that the general managers chose Jokic because may seem more of the team player for them. So yeah, man, that's an interesting one, and we'll see if he pays attention to that stuff this season.
He will. He will.
Well, I think he will, but of course he might downplay it.
He's going down. He's going to downplay it because he's not going to like. You know what? I think that the thing if we're going to be real with ourselves, like Embiid is honest when you ask him stuff. Like other people, you say, "Oh, I don't want this. I don't want that." Even down to Maxey said that, and it sounds great. But who doesn't want to be an All-Star? Who doesn't want to be an MVP? Who doesn't want to be a Hall of Famer? Right? But people always say that because you know that when you say stuff like that, it's like you putting yourself above the team, or it could be relayed that way to people. People assume that's what you're doing. And I think Joel Embiid has learned that, yes, I'm being honest. People are asking me these questions. It's not like I'm coming out saying, this is that, I want to do this. He's answering people's questions. But I think he understands, like, when by him doing that, people perceive that he could care less about the team. He was just worrying about himself. So now I think that he's going to say, "Oh, I don't care." But deep down inside, we have to know that all the players want it. And who wouldn't? Like if you're saying like, "Yeah, I don't care. I want to be the last man on the bench. I don't care if I start. I don't care if I do this." Well, then you don't have that competitive juice needed for you to be a great player in this league. You know what I'm saying? So you can't hold that against a guy.
I don't. So, well, listen, man, as always, this was fun. Got to let everybody know, Keith, that as we step away for the day and we reconvene tomorrow, we got to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we'll dive into, I think I want to talk to Keith, I want to talk to you and the listeners out there about the Sixers team defense. They've talked about how the team defense is very important and they want to be the number one defensive team. How realistic is that goal? I want to explore that with you tomorrow. Before we do that, of course, we want to make sure that we let you know about making your second listen, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, with host Josh Lloyd taking down the number one daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. He brings that to you on a daily basis. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. So we hope that you can check out Josh on the Fantasy Basketball podcast, the Locked On Fantasy Basketball, and we hope that you enjoy it, and we appreciate you hanging out with us. Keith, can you let everybody know where they can find us?
Yeah, you know what? Wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, I mean, you can come like check us out. You know what I mean? We're there wherever you get your podcast, and we're also on YouTube. But I tell you, once you get on that YouTube channel, you're going to see that Liberty Bell. Click on that Liberty Bell and you'll become a subscriber of our podcast. Now, what you need to do is tonight, you need to go to 97.5 FM and listen to my man D at the Divine Giving Show at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. So do that tonight. Also, make sure you keep up with him on social media today and every day at Divine G 975. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Pompeii on Sixers, and you can read my stuff and Inquirer.com, or you can purchase a Philadelphia Inquirer. I did a story on Tyrese Maxey about how he's performing in these two preseason games. And I also did a breakdown on Joel Embiid, with the GM survey. So, you know what, there's two stories for you. My man D is going to have everything covered from 7 to 10 today. And also what you can do is, you know what, you got time to just chill and relax. Make sure you check out some of our earlier podcast episodes from this week.
Greatly appreciate it, Keith. Thanks so much, man. Enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you tomorrow, and everybody will catch up with you also. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And all right, D, have a great one, bro.
No doubt. Thanks, man.